You're listening to Emmy Award-winning host Jordan J. Adams.
Today we're going to focus on the mental aspect of the game. Could not be talking with a better guy to help us with the mental game than the founder of the Play Big Academy, Dr. Tom Hanson. Dr. Tom has been coaching everyone from little leaguers to world champions since 1983. Full-time Performance Enhancement Director for the New York Yankees, Performance Enhancement Consultant for the Texas Rangers, Performance Enhancement for the Anaheim Angels and Minnesota Twins, co-author of Heads Up Baseball, playing the game one pitch at a time. As if that wasn't enough.
I want to meet that guy.
He holds a PhD in sports psychology from the University of Virginia. He has an MS in sports psychology from the University of Illinois. In other words, if you're interested in the mental aspects of sports performance, and for that matter, life performance, this is the show for you. It's time to make our fighting weight. Let's hit it with Dr. Tom. Thanks for joining us, big guy.
All right, thank you very much. Makes me think of when I was a kid. They used to call me mental, and I thought it was a compliment. and and so I went into it as a field. So that's how I ended up here.
That's funny. You didn't know that was a little prophesizing there. Well, it's clear you are laser focused and really into the mental game. And you're clear what you wanted to do with your life, apparently from early on. How did you get into sports psychology?
Well, I was a very good athlete, but not good enough athlete to play really beyond college. I mean, I was big. We do what we tend to be good at, and I was bigger than just about everybody growing up, and so I dominated in sports, and so that makes it a lot of fun. And so I played sports through high school and on into college. Played football, high school, baseball. And then played a lot of rugby, played 9 years of rugby, won 3 Big Ten championships, ultimately while getting my master's degree at the University of Illinois. But sitting down as a sophomore in college, no idea what I wanted to major in. It's like, okay, what do I like? Oh, sports. And then it's like, well, what's something real? And psychology. I had a Psych 101 course, really liked it because they taught me things that I already knew. They just put names for it. And so I thought it was pretty easy. And 2 weeks later, I was in a bookstore and I saw a book called Sports Psyching. It's like, oh my gosh, there's a field called sports psychology, and I've really been in it ever since.
You know, we hear a lot about it. We've heard the term sports psychology forever. We've heard the term mental toughness forever, but I'm not quite sure that people actually make the connection. People know what it means to be happy, or they also know what it means to not be happy, but like, how can you be mentally tough? I mean, what does that term mean?
Well, one term comes to mind when someone talks about formally defining it. One I've liked for a long time is the ability to consistently play at or near your best, regardless of circumstances. So, regardless of what's going on around you, you're playing well. I just hung up with a AAA baseball player who's done really well. He's come a long ways, but now he's in AAA, and I got to prove to people that I belong in the big leagues. And he's, hitting one something. He's hitting really poorly. And so that's a circumstance. Can he consistently play at near his best despite being one step away now from his dream? So stuff happens in the world around us. Can we hold our center? Can we hold on to our being who we are? And who we really want to be, regardless of what's going on around us. I think the key distinction for me, what is like the first decision point of every moment, really, in every life, but it happens every moment, is whether you're going to be a victim or a player. A victim is a victim of circumstances. What happens outside you determines how you think and feel and then act. Whereas a player generates from the inside. It says, you know what? This is the life I'm going to create. You know what? This is who I'm going to be. This is what I'm going to do. And they use that and are able to consistently come from the inside out. That to me, on my website right now, I've got a free giveaway, which is about the Hall of Famers secret. I interviewed a bunch of Hall of Famers because I've always been interested in, like, how do the best do it? What are the best people? Let's talk to the best people. How do they do it? And the Hall of Famer secret for me is that they play from the inside out. what I'm talking about, they say, you know what? Here's the guy I'm going to be. And they take it from the inside out rather than what 95+% of people do, which is their environment um, determines how they think and feel.
What a powerful lesson, not just for the sport of baseball, but for life itself, not letting the exterior determine. Oh, I heard a great saying. It was Ralph Waldo Emerson. Someone had just sent me the quote this morning. Why should I let the thoughts that are running around in someone else's mind determine my happiness? And it's sort of like, it's a kind of similar to what you're saying there. Why should I let all these exterior things that are just random and are going to happen no matter what? Why should I let those determine my happiness or my performance for that matter?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, what I was just talking about with this guy. He's like, hey, all these people are watching, and there's people not watching, and they're only seeing his stats. So his stats better be good now. He's more comfortable with top people watching him than when the top people aren't there, because now it's all about the stats. So, but can you let go of all that and still just be yourself and be who you want to be? I think that's really the ultimate challenge in life, and also I would say the key to happiness.
Wayne Dyer had this wonderful story that he told. I never forgot it because it was such I don't know, it painted like a visual image in my mind when I was listening to it. He talked about one time in particular when he was playing tennis, and he was in the zone, and he was really in the zone. And he had a really good meditation before he played. And he said it was almost the most bizarre thing that ever happened to him in his life. He said because everything slowed down. He could see the ball. He could see the seams in the ball. He knew where the ball was going almost before the guy hit it. Everything was working so well, and he said he could not miss the ball. He said he would have beaten Federer on that day. And I think he was serious.
Mm-hmm.
And we've all, I don't know if we all have, but I think most of us have had glimpses of that where you just couldn't go wrong. Is there any way to bottle that and reproduce it, or are you sort of a victim of randomness when it occurs and it's just going to happen when it happens? You don't have any control over it.
Well, I look at the zone like that as like falling asleep. It's not something that you totally can control, but you can set the conditions for it to happen. If I just said, hey, go to sleep, it's pretty hard to do. But if you go and brush your teeth, go to the bathroom, floss your teeth, perhaps, go put on what you'd put on, get yourself in bed, lights out, head down. Doesn't guarantee sleep. We all know that, but it does create the conditions for it to happen. And and so it's really a matter of knowing yourself, knowing how do I create the conditions, how do I create the environment that is conducive to my being consistently at my best. So knowing yourself is one of the most important things that a person can do. What are the things? What are the thoughts? What's the focus? What are the images I can create that help me be at my best, and then deliberately choose to do those things rather than again, being a victim, which is just, hey, I got a couple hits, or things went well, caught a break with this or that, and now all of a sudden I feel good because things have gone my way. And so it's really, if you know yourself, it's first off, take responsibility for your thinking. It's like, okay, I'm going to choose what I think about. I'm going to choose what I focus on. Second, hey, I'm going to know myself. I'm going to know who I am, and then know what my mission is, and then go through and prepare the way I need to, and then make adjustments along the way. And then ultimately, though, when you talk about the zone, you have to come to that you don't really need to be there to play well. That was the parting shot I just had with this player, was like, keep your mission greater than your feelings. Because if people get hung up on, oh, I'm not in the zone, or I don't feel 100%, now they're directing their focus onto what maybe the 20-30% of their talent that they don't have access to right now, versus the 70% that they do. And we talk about, well, do you have to feel great? Are you that bad that you have to feel great in order to perform well? Hopefully, anyone worth their salt is going to say, no, I don't. I mean, have you ever played well or performed well on a job or in a ring or wherever you are without feeling 100%? Well, of course, there's tons of people. Like, I interviewed Stan Musial, like the all-time #2 guy in total bases. He had a 4 home run game where he almost didn't play, because he was hurt. And Willie Mays hit 4 home runs when he was sick. And so on the one hand, you want to see how good you can feel, and there's all kinds of techniques and approaches for generating that unstoppable confidence feeling, which is great to have. But then when the lights come on, when you cross the line, whatever it is that starts, whatever it is that you do, you want to know that, okay, here's what I need to focus on. And this is what I'm going to do, regardless of how I feel. So in a nutshell, it becomes a two-step process: feel good and focus. Feel as good as I can, but now it's showtime. Focus and know that if I just pay attention to the right things, I've got a great shot to perform well, no matter how I feel.
I love that saying, keep your mission greater than your feelings. That's a great, simple sentence that you can always keep in your mind and call upon. Keep the mission greater than your feelings. That's powerful. And speaking of powerful, you have a great book out called Play Big, which I really enjoyed reading. In Play Big, you chronicle the life of a player who is slumping, and it keeps getting worse. And you do this through a mysterious fan who the player can never quite see, but this mysterious fan always seems to have the right thing to say to help him, almost with Yoda-like compassion and wisdom. This slumping player finally starts listening and really improving his game. It's worth getting the book just for the story itself, but the wisdom we all get from this mysterious fan is a real value add. How did you come up with the idea for the book and the mysterious fan?
Well, I knew that we learn best through stories, from all the way back, and I know you're into the paleo scene, and I'm big on it, particularly from a mental standpoint, which we can work back to. But I had a bunch of different ideas. Originally, it was like Morgan Freeman was going to play the guy of this janitor who the player was going down to the ballpark, and he meets the guy that's Morgan Freeman, and he goes to a game, and then he actually shrunk him. Morgan Freeman shrinks the guy down like a Fantastic Voyage thing. Remember Raquel Welch in the movie?
How could I forget?
And learning about stress and what goes on in the body by being in a little submarine with Raquel Welch in that, going through. But that was a little too much. And then I had a Sixth Sense thing going where the player would be talking with this guy he'd never seen, who described, round face, heavyset guy, a little older. And then during the game, he's having this conversation with him. And then in the end, the player thanks the coach and says, "Hey, thanks for letting your buddy be in the dugout. He's really helpful." And the guy's like, "I didn't have a buddy." And it was like Babe Ruth,
Oh, I love it.
And so it was like, he talked to dead people, but that was a little bit much too. And I was actually talking to a guy who said, how about, he was kind of channeling it. He said, how about like Tool Time? Remember with Tim, what's his name?
Tim Allen.
Tim Allen.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about like a guy through the fence?
Right.
That's more palatable. It's not too far out, even though you never should sit and talk to a player. But it's a summer league, so it's a little more casual. So that's kind of the evolution of where that was. But it was really driven by, I want to teach something that's a little bit edgy, and what I'm going to need, and what I would need to do is draw people in with a story. And so by the time it gets weird, I get to what I think is the good stuff, they're hopefully drawn into the story, that they keep going and they don't realize what I'm saying.
I think that it does that, Tom. I think it captures it, because for me, it was a wonderful blend of addiction, which a good story does. A good story gets you addicted. You have to know what happens. You start caring about the characters, and you need to know what happens. And that's what happens. You get addicted to the story because it's just a flat out great story in and of itself. And then you get this wonderful value add. So it's almost like fiction and nonfiction at the same time, in that, it's storytelling. But there's all these nuggets in there, and the nuggets serve you. And I'm kind of a guy who, my wife loves to read fiction, and I say that's fine, but in the end, you've just kind of burned 3 hours of your life, or actually worse yet, maybe 2 weeks of your life. And what's your takeaway other than a bunch of drama and it's a soap opera? But if there's stuff in there that serves you, makes you a better person, helps you make more money, makes you a better dad or a better mom, or helps you with your game, then it's a double win as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, thanks. That's very much my approach with The books that I like the best are the kind of business fable thing. We have another one, Who Will Do What by When. It's a story of a failing manager who goes back to his high school baseball coach that teaches him how to communicate effectively and operate with integrity. So that's Who Will Do What by When. And with Play Big, with that kind of story, it's like so much of what I end up doing is sort of like metaphorically like a pill. Like they'll coat a pill in a plastic so that you can get it down into your throat, and then it dissolves. And so I'm trying to get into people when they don't even really realize what's in there, and then it's too late. It's actually they've actually read what I've had to say before they realize what's coming.
Yeah, and I mean, it brings to mind, George Lucas, who I think I'm guessing, I have no idea, but I'm guessing he's probably an Eastern type of guy, probably into meditation, because when he talks about the Force, just relax, close your eyes, relax, be thoughtless. Everyone just, I don't know about you. I think we're in the same generation where we grew up on Star Wars, and it was all about, relax and let the Force be with you. And the Force is strong in this one.
And if you do, you'll get the girl.
Yeah,
unless it's your sister.
Yeah. We won't talk about that. But he was beating up on the bad guys, right? And he could shoot the seed out of an apple, and because he was relaxed, and like you said, he was coming from within, and he wasn't concerned with appearances. He was more concerned about being in the moment.
Yeah, and that's huge. I mean, my basic coaching model really is clear the past. So we go into the past and clear out using a tapping technique that I really like. And then the second step is clear your future, because a lot of times we're afraid of getting big. I know I've realized a while back that part of where I've kept myself small was I had this unconscious feeling like, oh, if I really succeed, I'll get swallowed up. I'll lose all my free time. And so, of course, you're not going to succeed if you've got some negative connotation or negative thought about what being successful would mean. And could you handle it? And then the third step is connect in the present moment. And so no matter, you clear the past as best you can to upgrade your beliefs, clear the future, and then connect in the present. And I was thinking of a story. I was talking with a woman today she was interviewing me to work with a little CEO, a group of 8 people that get together once or twice a year. And we were talking about fear. All about fear. And so, yes, you want to clear things from your past. You want to clear things from the future, but ultimately the lights are going to come on and it's time to play. And it made me think of this thing I learned from the inner game of tennis with Tim Gallwey, which I still think is about the best sports psychology book there is. I was watching him do a workshop teaching about how to help a woman overcome her fear of the ball when volleying. So she's at the net, got her racket up, and she's afraid of the ball. And he said, all I want you to do is as the ball's coming at you, or then eventually it became as the ball hits your racket, tell me if the ball's spinning forward or backward. And she's like, what was it? Oh, I don't know. And then what was it this time? It was spinning forward. What's this? Now it's backward. And all of a sudden, we're all just watching her drop down these killer volleys.
Wow.
Because she was absorbed into a critical variable. So it's like, what's the lesson being? What's the critical variable here that you can pay attention to that has everything else go away? And she just, it wasn't about, hey, don't think about your fear or don't think about this or that. It was like, was the ball spinning forward or backward as you hit it? Which is a nice kind of NLP, suggestive, hypnotic kind of thing. As you hit the ball, the presupposition is called, as you hit the ball, was it spinning forward or backward? And so it really becomes about our ability to identify a critical variable, no matter how you feel. You say, well, keep your mission greater than your feelings. Her mission was to see what the ball was doing. Like when I interviewed Hank Aaron. So Hank Aaron, all-time leading, well, he was home run guy, but he's the all-time leading total base leader. So if you get a double, that's 2 total bases. And if you get a triple, now you've got 5 total bases for the game. And he's the all-time leader. And the second place guy is Stan Musial, who my dad's hero. But Stan Musial would have to, in order to catch Aaron, would have to come back to life and then get base hits and run the bases for 12 miles to catch Hank Aaron. I
Wow.
mean, so that's like, you got to be kidding me.
Sounds to
So
me like
from a
no one's going to catch him. Wow.
no, it's like that's ridiculous. 23 years averaging 305 average. It's like, so my question to him, how'd you do that?
Right.
And what he talked about really was his mental preparation, how he would visualize what a guy has and what he's going to pitch and what he throws and how his ball moves and what he's done before. But then ultimately it was all about the ball in the guy's hand, because he had like death threats. There were people saying, hey, you'll be in Montreal July 4th, 5th, and 6th. You're going to die one of those days. And he kept hitting home runs. And it's like, how do you do that? Because if you're trying to hit a home run, that brings in attention and it makes it really unlikely that you'll hit a home run. And he said, well, it was just what I've been telling you. It's like I would be visualizing what the guy had, and I'd picture the ball coming in, and all that there was for me was the ball. And when you think about it, it's like, well, how do you block out? You could say, well, how do you block out the crowd? How do you block out the death threats? How do you block out any distraction, whatever it might be in anyone listening's life? Well, you get so into something else. He got so into the ball that everything else fell away. If there's a noise in the room right now, for example, as you're listening, try to block that out. Just block out the car noise or whatever sound is in the room, air conditioner, that you didn't hear until I just mentioned it. Just block that out. And you don't really, because your focus goes right to it. It's like, don't think of a pink elephant. So it's like, boom, how do you do it? You get so into something else. So much of success in this third stage of mine, clear the past, clear the future, connect with the present, is what's the critical variable, and just go all in on that.
You are listening to Dr. Tom Hanson, and we are just having a really powerful conversation about the mental aspect of not just sports performance, but life in general. Dr. Tom Hanson has been the full-time performance enhancement director for the New York Yankees, performance enhancement consultant for the Rangers, Anaheim Angels, Minnesota Twins, and is a prolific author. Before we go further, give everybody your website, because at this point there might be some people wanting to check in and see what you look like and check out the site while they're listening.
Sure. I've got a few, but one is Play Big Baseball. Play Big Baseball. Well, yeah, playbigbaseball.com. You can get a free video there that takes you through an exercise to give you instant confidence. And secondly, I have another sports site called Yips Be Gone, YIPSBEGONE, Yips Be Gone. I put that up about 6 or 7 years ago on a whim. I was practicing how to set up a website, and I just worked with a few people with the yips, which is this throwing or putting or anything problem where it's just an extreme anxiety, extreme phobia. And so if you're having something that used to be easy is now hard, it's probably the yips. You can check out yipsbegone.com. And the last one I'll say is headsupperformance.com is the corporate site for my wife, Birgit, who's a master certified coach, and I run Heads Up Performance. And we work with small businesses and all the way up into Fortune 500s in terms of leadership development, talent identification. We have a great assessment that we're able to help identify what's going on for people, what their limitations are, and what will work and doesn't work for them. And then we coach people there. So it's all human performance. It doesn't matter really what you do. The principles that we've just been talking about in terms of, say, just identifying a critical variable and going all in on it and keep your mission greater than your feelings, that applies. I mean, if you're a surgeon or a veterinarian or delivering pizzas or whatever it is that you might do, that's the level we're talking about. It's just human performance fundamentals.
One of the greatest laps in human performance happened in your sport of baseball, and it was one that broke my heart in a million pieces. And that, of course, was the Bill Buckner ground ball from Mookie Wilson that allowed the Mets to win Game 6 and go on and win the whole thing. A weird thing happened before that game. I was working as a assistant producer at the NBC affiliate in Boston. And our sports director, who was beloved, his name is Bob Lobel, was interviewing Buckner before the game. And Buckner had a really bad attitude. You could tell he was really defensive about some pretty reasonable questions that Lobel was fielding his way. And, Buckner just was not in a good place. And it was amazing later when that happened. I could never get that out of my mind, that interview that Lobel had with Buckner. And Buckner treated Lobel really poorly. And Lobel's just a great guy, and everybody loves him in New England. So we couldn't figure out why he was treating him so poorly. It's kind of one of those mental things, isn't it? Like you start a game angry or mad or defensive. Buckner was not in the zone. It's a pretty easy ground ball, and he's got to live with that. And, it's not fair. I mean, it's one play out of millions. He makes that 99 times out of 100. So it's really not fair to beat him up. But, going into a game angry is probably not a good idea, is it?
No, not at all, unless it helps you. That's back on this idea of individual differences.
Yeah.
You think of a guy, Bob Gibson, just going way back, St. Louis Cardinals pitcher. He seemed to be angry the whole time. For the most part, some anger isn't helpful, but guys will say that it is. At times, they'll say, I really at my best. I got so mad. I was whacking these tennis balls, or I was just so mad. I picked up the phone. I called. But it really isn't usually the anger. It's now the focus. There's a focus and an energy. There's a resolve that's there. And it isn't the anger. The anger is a tough fuel to run on. It doesn't burn well. Because it burns you from the inside. I would rather have a guy be burning love than burning fear or anger. I have this totem in Play Big, where at the very top is freedom. Just below that is confidence. To me, there's like another level above confidence, which is just freedom and joy. And there's anyway, that's the high, and at the very bottom is fear. And it's just a bump up there is anger. So there's like this totem or continuum of emotions, and generally being at the lower end is not. It's not going. You might be able to perform well, especially because you're focused. It's like you feel as good as you can, and then you focus. I've been afraid of striking out and hit a home run, but because I used that energy and directed onto that critical variable. But again, generally, being angry or upset is not effective. It brings in also the second point is like this law of attraction. I'm always looking for ways to just, a unifying theory of things, and that's basically saying what you give out, you're going to get back. So in Play Big, actually, I look at life or the universe as a pitchback screen. That if you throw a ball hard against a pitchback, it's coming back hard. If you throw it soft, it's going soft. And so what you throw out into the universe, it's like a giant pitchback. It's going to bounce back, and in that case, it bounced back at Buckner. Sometimes it's that fast, and sometimes it's more over a longer term. You don't necessarily always get that immediate bounce back, but I've found certainly that the better vibes I put into the world, the better stuff comes back at me.
It's a metaphor comes to my mind that actually mimics the paleo that you had mentioned earlier, the paleo nutritional approach. And you can almost liken running on anger to running on sugar nutritionally, where you get a big blast and then you're going to gas out because it's not a sustainable fuel. Conversely, running on love, like you were saying, is more like running on oil or being ketogenic. Rather than running on glucose. You're running on a ketogenic diet. It's a nice, slow, steady, always available, always replicating eternal fuel source that keeps coming to you, and it replicates itself and even magnifies itself. So it's you can almost liken needing to run on anger to running on sugar.
I think that's great. I think that's right on. Yeah, in terms of what fuel are you running on? It basically is going to be love or fear. It's somewhere on the continuum between, but those are the two basic ends.
Does the mind lead the body, or does the body lead the mind?
Very much. To me, it's one thing, and so it's all connected. You don't have necessarily, they think mind-body connection, which difference. But you ask, what's the difference between the mind and the brain? Would be an important distinction there, but I look at it in terms of all being one thing. It's mind-body connection. Well, it's all one. You don't have a mental game and a physical game. you have baseball, or you have tennis, or you have stock trading. You know, it isn't, yeah, it's mental, but it's also physical, but it's like, it's done by a human being. So what does it mean to be human? What is entailed there? And to me, then they're really like one thing. And very often, though, I can say that it's easier. One saying, it's like it's easier to act your way into a new level of thinking than to think your way into a new level of acting. And so if I have just a few minutes to work with a player, the first thing, or a business person, the first thing I'm going to do is talk about the body, how you're carrying your body, because I see it all as energy. Again, back on this idea of, we'll come up with, simplify into like a unifying ideas that can be applied across many situations. One is this idea of chi, or of energy. You just look at everything from that perspective. The body, when it's hunched over, it's like there's blocked. It's like a hose that's kinked. When it's up, you know, when you think of Usain Bolt winning the 100-meter dash, he's got his head up, his chest up, his arms are up, he's looking up, his corners of his mouth are up. If you do that, and there's a fun TED Talk on body language where the woman talks about doing that. And, you know, they do that for 2 minutes, and then they take a gambling test of some kind. You know, would you gamble this or this? And the people who have sat for 2 minutes with their hands up in this Usain Bolt, which is across animals, even apes and other people that can put their arms up, or other animals, do that. And it's changed their state, and their cortisol levels are different. So how you carry yourself. So absolutely, you can think your way into a new level of acting, but it's easier to act your way into a new level of thinking.
I love that. I love this whole subject of state change because it is such a biohack, if you will, and life hack in that if you learn how to do it, and there's so many different methods. You had mentioned tapping, which we should delve into because that's fascinating in and of itself. But there are so many different methods for state change. And if we can remember, there needs to be some sort of a memory system, because it's very easy to wake up and get hypnotized by the exterior and just fall into a pattern. And for me, I'm speaking for me, I'm taking ownership of this, to fall into the pattern of just the regular life and to forget the mission and to forget really where I want to go, and to forget state change. And it's insane. I'm relying on music, which is not bad, but I rely on music for my state change, but I can't play music all the time. So I got to find some other ways for state change besides my music.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of things to it, and everything from learning to any kind of performance. Really, it's very state dependent. You know, the guy I was talking to said before this was like he's hitting a $174, I think. You know, hitting 174. But does that mean he goes up with a 0-2 count? No, he could come from any state that he could generate based on any belief that he's totally free to go up there in any state that he wants. There isn't a dictation from the outer world, like of his recent stats, that says he therefore has to feel X or Y, or that he incurs any penalty. So this whole idea of being able to manage your state, absolutely massive. And then again, but even if you don't get to your some peak state, keep your mission greater than your feelings and focus on the critical variable and go all in with it. I was listening to this guy, I think it was this guy, James Clear. He'd be a great guy to interview. He's a very thoughtful guy.
What's his name?
James Clear, jamesclear.com. He's
okay.
a weight trainer, but a lot of stuff on habits and physical fitness. He very impressive guy. And I think it was him. Well, he was good whether he talked about this or not.
Yeah.
Could be erroneous attribution here, but I was talking about two things that shape behavior. One is your beliefs, you know, and you think, oh yeah, I get that, you know, your belief and what you believe, you're going to act consistent with your belief. Yes. But the second one, your environment. And the greater of the two, your environment. It's because that to me is like, wow, yeah, I agree with that one. So I think about it. It's like if people around you are doing something, you tend to do that whether that's consistent with your belief will adapt to that. It doesn't have to. You can be a player. You don't have to be a victim of your circumstances, but your environment is huge. And again, if you look at energy or qi and flow, feng shui, your environment, the room, the space that you put yourself in. When I was with the Yankees full time, it was very clear. Here's how we wear our socks. Here's how we wear our hair. Here's what we do between stations, and here's what we do, so forth. All had to do. It was like palpable. Success was palpable in the air because of the environment that they created. So I think it was Churchill that said, first we create our environment, and then our environment creates us. So what you put around you, and I know it was big in was it the Talent Code or some book like that, where they were looking at one of the things that were keys, whether it would be baseball or violin or whatever, was that they put up pictures of role models, put up things in the environments that are stimulus cues for people that trigger that kind of thinking.
You know, what just popped into my mind literally just now, I was a little bummed out that Nike grabbed Just Do It and kind of commercialized it, which, me saying that probably means I'll never get Nike as a sponsor, but I was bummed out that they grabbed it and commercialized it, because that is one of the most powerful sentences, because just doing something, just taking action and just getting into it and making a million mistakes is where the nectar is. It's in those making mistakes that you have the fun and the learning and the mastery. And, you can sit around and think about something to death and never take action. I would much rather just go out and make some mistakes and learn. And it's the opposite of boring. Go out there and get on the field and take a swing at the ball and dive for the ball. I have trouble watching sports. I have trouble watching. I want to play. As I see the sport happening, although I don't have trouble wanting to get into the cage with any of my fighters. That's their sport. They can have it. But baseball and volleyball and golf, I can't watch those sports. I need to play them. Tennis, I have to play. Fighting, those guys can do that. Speaking of fighters, let's take a scenario. Now that we've created, we've gotten a foundation of some of your work. Let's take a scenario of a fighter who might be sitting in the locker room, and he's got to sit there for 5 or 6 other fights, watching the guys getting all psyched up before they go in, or their nervousness. The locker room has so much tension in it because, there's a red locker room and a blue locker room. So anyone who's in that red locker room knows the locker room right next door. There's a guy who's going to try to make you be unconscious within the next half an hour. Some guys are fantastic at dealing with it. They put their Walkman on and go off to another place. And then other guys burn their adrenaline too early, and they gas out in the cage. What are some techniques, some real applicable techniques that a fighter or an athlete can use, 2 or 3 things that pay big dividends for an athlete or a person just looking to perform in life?
So the first thing would be to know yourself, because anything I say, oh, this would really help, may be the last thing that someone listening would want to do. You look at Pete Rose or Derek Jeter, very talkative. Derek Jeter might be looking around when he's on deck, whereas some other guy, that would mean they're completely out of it. It would completely screw them up. Some guys be talking, and so it's like, well, what do you need to do? The image in my mind flashed to my college roommate, Jay Kameen, who was all conference pitcher twice, and we'd be warming up, and we were in Iowa, and it was very flat. Well, it was where we were at the, and you could see him like a half a mile away. He was taking a walk. He's a half a mile away. It's like, is he even going to make it back? But, and for other people, that would be the worst thing you could do. So the biggest thing of all, I would say, is like pay attention to what it is that you do when you're at your best. But at some point, you might have performed your best in a fight. How did I prepare? What did I do to get ready? What were the things that seemed to work? So that would be the number one thing, is to know yourself, figure out what it is for me. Am I at my best when I'm like, I'm going to dominate, I'm going to kick his ass, I'm going to, and going off? Or is it more like this quiet sniper who I'm at my best when I'm calm? So do not look around at everyone else and see what they're doing and think I should do that. It's more go inside, just think, long before the fight, what do I need to do to be at my best? What is it that works for me? So that would trump almost anything else that I would say from a quickie standpoint. In terms of also being useful, what can I put out here to be useful at this moment would be on the ABCs from Play Big. A stands for act big. So carry yourself, generally being upright, head up, chest up, is going to allow more energy to flow, and you're going to feel more confident. That's that act your way into a positive way of thinking. B stands for breathe big. Breathing in to your belly. When we get nervous, we tend to choke. We said stop breathing, and I'll double back perhaps and talk about why that would be. But B is breathe deep, and I would suggest it in through the nose, out through the mouth, just a nice, slow, steady breathe. If you feel like you're over amped, you're trying to keep yourself down into a range of effectiveness. If you want to bring yourself up, just breathe. In fact, breathe the way that you want to feel. We can regulate our breaths, and however you want to feel, up or down, breathe that way, and that will lead you. I remember Mel Gibson, not necessarily, I wish it was some higher end award-winning actor, but he's had a lot of success. But he said, "Oh, acting's easy. You just figure out how your character would breathe in this situation, and breathe that way, and then you're in." So you could use the same for sports or business performance. How would I breathe if I really was going to be who I wanted to be, and then choose to breathe that way, and your physiology will follow. And then lastly is C, is commit big. And commit big is like, what do I want to have happen? What is my critical variable? I'm committed to the ball, to the target, to the mitt, to whatever it is, to being a certain way. Commit big. So you just do and then D is do it. So A is act big, breathe big, commit big, and then just do it. And so you can use that. Again, I always look for things that can go just across the board. Yeah. So for pre-game, pre-match, you can think, okay, what works for me? But in general, acting big, breathing big, and committing big, find the way you do those three things, and doing those beforehand is something I could throw out in the time we have to give something useful.
That's very useful, Doctor. Very useful. I think people love acronyms because it allows you to remember something in a pinch. People are not going to remember 80 pages of the book. They're going to remember an acronym here and there. And that's what, for me, if I was an author, I would want someone to have a takeaway that they could use for the rest of their life. That's why that acronym is so great. And I love the acronym. Act big. It's what we were talking about before. Get out there and just act as if. Let the body create it. Go make some mistakes until the body gets good at it and start getting some reward and start getting some confidence. I think really, doesn't it come down to just not being afraid to fail, like not having that be a big story?
Absolutely. It's huge. And it comes back to this, and I don't know what we're looking at time-wise, but back on this idea of paleo, as to like, well, what is the big deal? Now in the fight world, the big deal is the guy really is trying to smash your face in, and that's a real fear. I mean, that's justifiable. It's like in gymnastics too, somewhat in baseball with the ball, but it's not. Most of them aren't such like real fear about a physical thing. But here's what goes on. Here's the deal. Because yes, if you are not afraid to fail, like this guy I was talking to, using this guy, but it was fresh on my mind because we just hung up right before this conversation was. I said, what is the worst thing that could happen? He said, striking out. I don't mind getting out any other way, but striking out. And so it's like his biggest fear. So of course, what we fear, what we attract. Remember this law of attraction. Hey, put out, hey, fear, don't strike out. Well, what's he going to do? He's going to strike out. So the thing with this, where it goes back on this paleo, is like why I'm even in business, is because we're not designed for the culture we live in. were designed for a couple 100,000 years ago, where it's like, okay, there's a real threat. That's a real lion. It's not a, it's not a tiger. Now we have Detroit tigers, which is an issue, but it's a real tiger. And so somehow it's like best if our cortex shuts down and we don't think, but you either freeze or fight or flee, fight or flight thing. So once your brain, I say you have this inner umpire that decides, am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? And if I'm safe, then I have access to my talent. I'm free. And if I'm not safe, though, the lizard, the back of your brain, takes over and says, I'm in control. You got to fight, flight, or freeze, because that's what's worked in the past. If you and I are walking along in the woods and there's a rustling in the leaves and I stop, I don't breathe, that's where a lot of the breathing stops, because if you're breathing, you're moving. And it's like in Jurassic Park, it's like, hey, dinosaurs only see movement, so hold still. It's a lot like that. So our eyes are attracted to movement. So stop breathing, stop everything until you know what it is. But if you keep whistling and it turns out to be a predator, I'm the one going back to pass on my genes of freezing. And so that's get passed on. And okay, that's the defense mechanism. Well, as we develop our cortex, now we build this society where it's got computers and cars and all kinds of things. We're not hunting and gather. We're designed to hunt and gather, but we don't hunt and gather. That's why we're so fat as a culture. Is we're not designed to sit and order Chinese. We're designed to walk around and occasionally get a meal and have a few berries or something. What I want to talk about with you is it's the whole paleo scene, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like, so the paleo mind is like, okay, cut off the cortex. Don't sit there and think about it. Don't talk to the tiger. Fight, flight, or freeze. And so now you do that, and then your muscles tighten up. And it's the worst thing in sports performance. It's the worst thing like in a business performance. It's just to freeze. And so the very thing that had to survive to get here is now one of our biggest enemies, because of the way that's all developed. And so for me, what the real work is, and this was like, hey, clear your past, is to clear past negative experiences, where really it's like change the memory in your head so that you remember them differently at the unconscious level, so that you don't associate negative consequences. Now, what are the negative consequences? Well, you've got the midbrain, which is very focused. Mammalian brain is very focused on being in a group, hunt and gather. It's like, well, hunt, you want to be in a group, and again to mate and to have fun, not be bored. You want to be in a group. So we're very group oriented. So the whole failure thing is largely about staying in a group. You want, hey, I want to fit in. It's like high school. It's like, I want to fit in. I want to fit in. I hope I just fit in. And that's that midbrain fear, because it occurs to us like literally live or die. If I fail, I'll look stupid, and then I'll get kicked out of the group, and then I'll die on my own. So it's we talk about the paleo diet, but here's the paleo mind. I don't know if the period necessarily right, but it's a cool word to think of. Prehistoric is all it means to me. So don't call in and say, well, what do you say paleo? Nitpick my history, but it's a caveman, ancient wiring of our brain that gives rise to these problems around the fear. So again, my work is around helping liberate people, including myself, from the fears that stop them from taking the action, because you're not going to get kicked out of the tribe. You're not in a tribe. You can get food, you can get other friends on Facebook if the couple people laugh at you. And so that's where we talked about environment. They say, hey, who are the 5 people that you hang out with most? What's their income? And that's what you're going to have. So that's your environment. And that's like the new normal. You want to get yourself into an environment where success is the norm. Like I was talking about with the Yankees. How can I leverage all these things? I got to know myself, but then I had to put myself in an environment where people are thriving, where it's the norm to exceed. Whereas, you're running sprints in high school football and you go hard and you win everyone, your buddies are going to hate you. if it's an average team, because now you're making them look bad. And you're sticking out. No one wants to do that because their buddies are going to get mad. And so it's called the psychopathology of the average. It's everyone gets pulled toward the mean, And it's the people who can break out of that, and they can either break out of it or, well, yes, the way is to associate yourself into an environment where that is the norm to be going for great. Versus the normal people, you say, hey, I'm going to be a millionaire. They'll say, oh, yeah, that. And they'll pull you down. And so that's what I had to say about that.
And, we are running out of time, but you plugged something into my brain really quick there at the last second. I used to host a game show at Disney called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And there were 6 hosts, and we'd all be taking turns hosting. But in the downtime, most of the hosts wanted to play video games. And I really was trying to get bigger and better gigs. I was trying to, move my acting career forward. And there was so much pressure. It's so much peer pressure to play the video game in between shows. It's almost like you're not one of us, you're not part of the fam, or you think you're better than us if you go do that. And more times than not, I would give in because I didn't want to be shunned from the group. The acceptance of being in that group was important to me. And I looked at how many years I did that show, and I probably could have written 5 books and gotten 3 more movies than I got if I had just worked in between shows instead of playing stupid video games that, video games are what they are. And now I'm going to get a bunch of hate mail from gamers, but, they don't really, how does it enrich you or help your career unless you're a game programmer? How does it help your career? But so tell us about the books again before we go, because we are out of time. You've got Yips Be Gone, you got Play Big, Who Will Do What and By When. Did I get those right?
Yeah, you got, it's just our website is yipsbegone.com.
Okay.
And there's a 15-minute video there that goes into a little more deep depth on what I was talking about in terms of how the brain actually works and with the beliefs and fear. So you don't have to have the yips to benefit from that. But then I've got playbigbaseball.com, and that's where you can get the book Play Big, Mental Toughness Secrets that Take Baseball Players to the Next Level. But as we talked about, it's not just a baseball book. It's a performance psychology book. And then headsupperformance.com is the home site for the baseball or for the more corporate stuff.
Well, what a treat. Again, his name is Dr. Tom Hanson. I'm sure if you just put that into Google, you'll get a lot of these websites that he's talking about. An illustrious career already, and still much more to come. We had so much more I wanted to get to, but we ran out of time. But I want to thank you for being with us. It was really a great conversation. I learned a lot talking with you.
Cool. Thank you very much, Jordan. I really loved it.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you for listening, and thank you for joining us in our quest to go straight at life, clear-headed and shredded. We'll see you next time.
For our full schedule of fights on the NBC Sports Network, CW and ABC affiliates, visit UnitedFightAlliance.com. United Fight Alliance. United, we fight.